All right, good morning, everyone. Let's begin. We'll start off with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we praise you for yet another day. We thank you for the help that enables us to come to this meeting. We thank you for the purpose of this meeting, Lord, to give folks an opportunity to voice their concerns, share their ideas, share their wishes. We just pray, Lord, that this Commissioner's Court would listen, and that we would utilize this time as it was meant to be. We ask for your blessing on this meeting. We thank you for your presence. We turn this meeting over to you and ask that your will be done and not ours. We just ask your blessings on this county. We thank you for our new loop. We pray that you will use it for the strengthening of the economy and the betterment of every person that lives in this county. We ask it all in Christ's name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good morning, everyone. Today is the 17th of September, 2014, and it's just a couple of minutes after 9 o'clock, and this is a special meeting of the Commissioner's Court for the purpose of a public hearing as well as another business matter that we're going to take care of today. This will be our first of two tax rate hearings for this year. Thank you. I'm going to start off with item number 1. We went ahead and put on a public comment section. If there's anybody here that would like to address anything other than what we have on the agenda, now is your opportunity. Anybody like to speak during the public time? If not, I will move on to the item number 2, which is our main item of business today. That is to discuss and welcome public comment on our proposed 2014 tax rate, which we proposed at our last meeting at a rate of 43.96 cents per $100 of valuation. At this time, I'm going to open up the floor to our public speakers, those that have asked to speak, and I'll just go in the order that I've got them here. Jerry Moody from Omaha, Texas. Jerry, welcome. And if you'll step up to the podium and just tap on that mic, make sure we've got that turned on. Thank you.
Omaha, Texas, but I do live in Titus County. I'm in that little segment out there that's kind of in no man's land. This is my first time at this Commissioner's Court, so I feel pretty passionate about the proposed tax increase. I serve on the Bowie Cass Board of Directors, Electric Co-op Board of Directors, served on it for 13 years, so I do have a little bit of insight about the political environment that is surrounding electrical utilities, even more specifically the generation of power. A couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken, we had a little bit of an increase on our taxes because of the luminant devaluation. We're proposing another increase on that because of some more devaluation of that plant. The paper kind of stole a little bit of my thunder if you read Sunday's paper, but maybe I can reiterate some points that were made in there and maybe add a few more points to that. The proposed EPA regulation that's currently on the books that is not in effect yet is wanting to reduce carbon emissions in the United States. Specifically, the state of Texas by 2020 has got to reduce carbon emissions by 42%. With that being said, what's going to happen is these coal-fired plants are going to shut down. And there's no way that we can reduce carbon emissions by 42% in the state of Texas if these coal plants don't shut down. So my point being is we need to be prepared for this plant out here not to be here. I think it's coming. I mean, especially if that EPA regulation passes and it goes into effect, we're not going to have that plant out here. So instead of raising our taxes on this, we need to be cutting the budget. Because I really think it's unfair that the citizens and the taxpayers of Titus County have to pick up the tax bill for Luminant for not being here, or the devaluation and the possibility of them not being here. Surely, if that plant's not here, we can't expect all the citizens of Titus County to pick up their tax bill. I mean, I just think that's completely unfair. The other point is I'm also a poultry grower and I'm also a cattleman. My income as a poultry producer over the last 5 years has been cut about 1/3, about 33%, because of the stuff that Pilgrims has got, the shutting of the Dallas plant, and et cetera. A substantial amount, whether you like the poultry industry or not, a substantial amount of taxes are paid by poultry growers. We already have poultry growers that are in serious financial trouble, on the verge of bankruptcy or going out of business. And this is just going to add another burden to poultry growers that they can't really afford. And if we start shutting poultry farms down, then we're going to have less taxable assets out there for the county to draw from, and it's just going to be a snowball effect. So I'm asking to have, for this court to consider not raising our taxes due to the devaluation of luminant power, because I think it's just something that we're just going to have to deal with. And this needs to be a baby step. I think this needs to be something that we need to look at and say, okay, we need to be prepared for this. So, so I'm asking the court not to raise our taxes and put an unfair burden on the rest of citizens of Titus County. Thank you.
Thank you. Nigel Christopher. Nigel, welcome.
Morning.
Good morning.
A couple of things about the budget. First of all, I was disappointed there weren't any copies of the budget summary out on this table. I have a copy because my commissioner gave me one, plus I looked at it on the website, but no, you'd think you'd have some available for this meeting. Secondly, there's a couple of things in the format of what you have produced that I'd like to address. Most of what you got in terms of showing the starting fund balances, the revenues, the expenditure, and the ending fund balances, that's all required and it's good, that's all in there. But in the local government code, section 111.004, itemized budget contents, it says, the county judge shall itemize the budget to allow as clear a comparison of practical between expenditures included in the proposed budget and actual expenditures for the same or similar purposes that were made for the preceding financial year. There was no comparisons in here. I think what it's asking is that you have a column of either last year, the year that's just ending, what the budget is for that, so we can see where the changes are. Secondly, there's no totals anywhere on this budget. You think it'd be nice to have some totals on the columns and so we can see what the total is, you can see what the total is, and you might want to split all the loop stuff out from the rest of it so it's clearer to see. I would like to see those changes made, and you could repost the thing ready for the meeting on the 25th. That would be...
I will get that done by the time we have our budget meeting Monday night. Thank you.
Thirdly, I mean, you've given us another sheet this morning about the valuation of luminant, but this is really not the issue. Luminant's been going down for years, we know that. The simple fact is you guys seem to be incapable of cutting any expenditure. This budget here has the non-loop expenditure for the coming year of right at $14.5 million. We only have to go back 3 years, and unlike Mr. Mooney, I've been coming to these meetings, as you know, for several years. That budget was $10 million, so you've gone up $4.5 million in 3 years. I mean, that's unfreaking believable when one of the biggest parts of our tax base has been going away. Where is the additional expenditure? I mean, your cover sheet says that this budget will raise $869,000 more property taxes, so there's probably at least that much more expenditure in here. Have you got any kind of summary of where all the extra money is going?
We will have an explanation, yes.
That would be good, all right? That's what I got for this week, and I'll see you on the 25th.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, and are you referring to those figures that were in the statement that was in the paper? About that $869 figure? Is that just so I'm...
That's what's on your sheet here.
Yeah, just want to be sure we see that reference. It is a bit of a unique situation this year in the way that is presented. in actuality, we are not attempting to raise any more than we raised last year. In fact, it will be less. But because of the uncertainty of the settlement with Luminant, if there is a settlement and what that ultimate valuation would be, you know, at the direction of the appraisal district who helped us derive those rates, that's how we're having to show that, even though the anticipated collection will not be that much. So I'm sorry that it's not a real clear reflection of the way that we would like for it to be presented, but we didn't have any choice in doing that. And it is somewhat misleading.
That number is based on the 450 million appraisal or whatever it was?
Right.
That the appraisal district had?
Yes.
So you're saying if it comes out at 350 or whatever, that number goes down substantially?
Well, when we had planned this, we were working under the assumption of a $232 million valuation from Luminant.
Right.
We have hopes as of last night. Apparently, they've got an agreement. We haven't been given the final terms, and I don't think that has been signed yet. I don't know what the impact will be at this point to our proposed tax rate if we do indeed have a settlement. Maybe Carl can enlighten us a little bit on that. I think he's had a conversation with Geraldine, but I imagine either way we're going to want to have a few days, maybe some more time with Geraldine to discuss what we can do to that tax rate if indeed we don't have to make the assumption that we're only going to collect on $232 million.
Well, do you have a plan B, so with lower expenditures on it?
Do we have a plan B if what? If there's no settlement?
If you end up with a lower valuation with Luminant, you must know where you're going to...
Let me make sure I understand what your question is. Again, the assumption here was that they would render based on $232 million. You know, that is our plan A. That's the only plan that we've had, and because we haven't been made aware of anything in the way of a settlement with Luminant. You know, they had 2 meetings where they rejected any kind of a settlement. I understand late last night that they did apparently have reached an agreement, but we haven't been told that that's official yet.
To be clear, this $869,000 of additional taxes, which valuation of Luminant is that based off of?
That's based on the assumption that they will only render at $232 million.
Okay. So if they come in higher, you've still set the tax rate higher, so you'll raise...
Well, we are hoping that we can adjust the tax rate lower if we can make the assumption that they will render at $350.
But you have to do that between now and the end of the year, right?
And we can, do that.
You're allowed to lower it after the end of September?
Well, I'm hoping that we can make some recalculations and interject this into our discussion at our next tax rate hearing. Because we certainly we don't want to raise the tax rate any more than we absolutely have to.
So it's the 14.5 million of expenditure you show in there. Is that a real number, or is that something you're going to adjust?
Okay, I'll let you say something. Let me get you on the microphone, because this is kind of important, and it's ironic that they had that meeting last night. I wish I could have had more time to make some adjustments.
That includes. This number here now. 600,000 of this 9 million. It's in general county. 400,000 of that is for the fire truck. That's not coming out of current year taxes. That's coming out of reserves that were held out of fund balance. Also, the 300,000 or 225,000 to do the election office is out of fund balance, but it's included in these expenditures. That's the reason that fund balance goes down from 5.6 to 4.9.
Yeah, I saw it was wrong.
So, there's $700,000 of that money that comes out of that.
Okay.
I don't know what the rest of it is.
Well, it'd be useful to know that substantial projects like that are included in the numbers.
And I don't know what number you're comparing it to. If you put this same sheet.
Last year's number.
Okay, well, I need to look at last year's sheet and see what's different. That should be the only items that are different. We didn't increase any expenditures anywhere in the budget, so.
Other than those specific projects.
So I'll have to look and see what makes up the difference.
But between now and the next meeting, we can put together some kind of a summary that'll make that clear. Thank you, Nigel. All right, and Judy Kent.
Unlike Mr. Moody, I'm here all the time. I'm here every year, and every year I say the same thing, and every year y'all do the same thing. It just seems unimaginable to me that you guys are elected to protect our money and to spend our money, but you don't think about us at all. All you do is raise our taxes. And I hear you say, because of the uncertainty of aluminum. I went to these budget meetings. Never, ever, ever was it asked for those departments, how can you cut your budget? Never, ever, ever do y'all mention in here, we need to cut the budget so we don't have to raise the taxes. We don't want to raise the taxes any more than we have to, is what you just said. But it never, ever comes to the point of where are we going to cut. It's always, well, we don't want to have to raise too much, or we hate to have to raise more than this. It's always raising the taxes. Every taxing entity that we've got here is raising our taxes. And y'all are looking at the luminant disappearance as money that's going out of your coffers. You're not looking at the luminant disappearance as what it's going to do to this county and what it's going to do to the taxpayers and our livelihood. Y'all are all living off the government tip. You've got 120 employees that y'all worry about. We're having all these discussions about benefits and retirement and insurance, but you're not thinking about the taxpayer out there and what we're going through. And it's this way every single year. And every year our tax base gets a little bit worse. And every year I think you guys are going to wake up and do something for the taxpayer. And every year I go through these budget meetings with y'all and you don't even mention it to your departments. You don't even talk about a plan B or what we can cut or what we can do to keep from having to raise the taxes. Y'all are busy redoing the courthouse, buying buildings, doing things to spend our money, but you're not doing anything to cut the money that you're expecting from the taxpayers. And I'm just saying it again and hoping somebody up here is going to listen.
Thank you. That's all that I had that had signed up. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? I'll certainly give you the opportunity. That's why we're here. All right. Commissioners, I'll start down here on my right end. Mr. Riddle, I'm sure you'd like to say something. Go right ahead.
Well, I feel the same. I've been coming to these meetings 3 years. We say that we are doing a good job as commissioners, but we raised $9.5 million. I gave a sheet last time. We've raised the same amount of money. I think that we confuse that effective rate. We can collect, means we can collect the same amount of money no matter what the value goes down as our, just as a have to do. But there is as Judy said, we could cut expenses. And there's expenses everywhere. We're the highest, we're an economically disadvantaged county. According to the TxDOT people, or the people that on the search deal, that's $32,000 for a family of 4. We have to live on it. But everybody in the county, like we had the deal on the retirement, we got a $250 match. One of only a handful of counties in the state that has that much. So then when we were questioned about cutting that $250 match to $2 match, it was turned down because, except by me, and then you said, well, it's okay because it's not going to be 11.5% or 11 point something in 2015. It's only going to be 11.18. Then they say 10.58 or whatever it is, almost 11% again in 2016. That's what they project. But we're talking about to 2020. That would have reduced our makeup. Now, understand, we're only required about 8% to fund our retirement plan. All this other percentage is for makeup. But you said, well, we're not going up, so I think we can leave it at 2.5. $93,000 is what it costs of our budget. I guess that's right. We have about a $4.5 million payroll. And if you take that, I think it would come down about $93,000. And this auto allowance, we always talk about it, and like I said, the budget's never changed. auto allowance, it's ridiculous. It's nothing but extra payroll, and we'll spend it, or at least the court spun it as auto allowance. The people need to know that money is, we take Medicare and Social Security for that money so that they don't have to report that to the IRS, the people receiving that money. And every time we go out of town, official does, except one time I've seen where I already get a car allowance, John Coburn did. If you or the commissioners or any elected official goes out of town, they put down whatever the IRS allows, 56 cents a mile. That's in addition to this, and I don't know why we call it, that's $133,000 a year we pay out in auto allowance. And like I said, the county attorney gets it. The county attorney gets that. He gets a full payroll. He goes off to camp for 4 months. He all gets a full payroll. We're so generous and we're so concerned about the county employees. And I said, and I love the county employees. And I don't think the county employees are overpaid. I think the elected officials are overpaid because we publish a payroll. We don't put $15,006 that a commissioner gets, $15,006 that a lot of other people get $15,600. That seems to be the magic number. The JPs get $7,200. The judge gets $6,000. I don't know where he travels, but he still gets 56 cents a mile. I mean, it's all over the place. We could do it. We got jobs to do. We got the secretary. I've brought all these up before. Down at the DPS, of course they don't want to have to replace her and pay for it. They've cut their budget. But we don't cut our budget. We just go ahead and keep her down there. She was put down there for a good reason a few years ago. They didn't have computers. And we get a percentage of tickets made from the overweight scale and stuff the county does. So we needed somebody to look after our interests, so they put her down there. Now you get a ticket, that computer will tell you within a few hours when they write a ticket out where the split goes on the revenue. It's foolish for us to have a county employee down there. But all of these things, and there's about 6 county employees that we don't really need. But for some reason, we don't want to do it. We don't want to make the cuts. I mean, in business, if you had a business and you run a business, if you got a downward in revenue, you just tell people, we got to have a cut, a 5% cut in spending. And so you manage to make a 5% cut in spending, and that's how you run something. But not here. We use that effective tax rate. We can just do it. And I don't understand. And I've been here 3 years. We've collected the same amount of money. We've increased our taxes by about 24%. With this year, if we go with that rate y'all proposed, that'll be another 6. We'll be at 30 cents, a third of a dollar we've added on to the poor taxpayers of this county. But our employees, out of those 3 years, we've given raises 2 years to our county employees. Everybody else suffering, being laid off, as the man said about the poultry industry, the Illumina. The coal miners aren't working, not as many of them. It's all going down. And the economy's picking up, would say. But I hope it does. It's just, and I hope the loop makes us get some new businesses in here. But until then, I don't think it's fair at all the way that we've done in the past. I think we need to do our best to cut it down, to leave the rate alone and do the things that we need to do. Then if it's necessary, we have to have public protection and fire. We have to have a sheriff's department stuff. We have to have certain things that we can't do without. But there's a lot of other things that we could do without. And I plead with you, please try to cut the budget. I mean, I'll do anything, to try to cut it. And I just wish that the elected officials would do the same thing. And I feel like a lot of them will. They've told me they would in private, that they would try to cut it. They would cut their budgets. But we don't ever ask it. I don't think it should be a question. We're getting X amount less money. We should cut our budget that much. Then there's exceptions. If we can't do it, they could come to the court again and say, I can't do it because of this. And I'm sure there's some good reasons they can't make a 5 or 10% cut. But we should be open to listen to those reasons. But I think it's just wrong, absolutely. I think it's a sin to do what we've done the last 4 years that I've been around here watching this thing. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Fields, anything?
The only thing I would have to say I would like to see what agreement they came up with before I say anything. And we'll have another meeting later on, but I would like to see that final figures that the appraisal district is.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping that they will have something here within the next few days. We've got until the end of the month to vote on our tax rate and on our budget. Surely we can have something by that time. But again, in the absence of that, we've done the only thing that we could do, and that is base it on what their rendered value was. Commissioner Hinton?
I have nothing, Judge.
Commissioner Hockaday?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
President.
All right, anyone else in the audience? I'm still going to leave the floor open. I had somebody else join us. Anybody else like to make a comment or a question? Just as a... Okay.
I meant to make when I was up there and I forgot to. I don't understand why we have to have all these special call meetings. The taxpayers try hard enough when you have meetings during their working hours to come up here twice a month. We got one during their working hours and one at night for them. But it's almost like we're having a meeting every week, and the taxpayers are out there trying to make money to pay the taxes that y'all are giving them. But you have all these special call meetings. There's no way they can keep up with them and be here to let y'all know how they feel. And it's just like if you waited till our regular meeting, we'd know more about what's going on at Lumina. But it seems like we've got a special meeting every week. I don't understand.
And I agree with you. I don't want to be up here any more than we have to, but unfortunately, we're bound by some time frames that were given by the appraisal district. It's just part of the law. In order to get the meetings done, in order to have them the appropriate amount of time, have them posted at the appropriate time, you know, this is not our first choice. Our next hearing will be next Monday night, right just prior to our normal Commissioners Court meeting. That'll be our second rate hearing. I'm sorry. Next Thursday, a week from today, will be our second tax rate hearing. We'll have a budget hearing, which will be much the same kind of discussion, just at the beginning of the Commissioners Court Monday. Well, no, our budget hearing will be at 6 p.m. Oh, I thought you said at 9. You said at night. Not at night. Yes, at night. 6 o'clock at night as well. Okay. And as far as other meetings, I don't know which ones you're referring to, where we were doing interviews or where we were talking about, you know, having workshops for insurance. You know, where we can, we're going to always take care of business on the normal 2 business meetings that we have, but sometimes we just can't get it all in there. Okay. All right. We're going to move on now to item number 3, and that is to consider and possibly approve recommendations for a variety of insurance items, property, casualty. Yeah, I do. And that was on what, last? That was on the agenda. I did want to note a correction that Joyce in our clerk's office had brought to my attention. At our last meeting on the 8th day of September, we had item number 17 that said consider and possibly approve a proposal of the 2015 tax rate. It's the 2014 tax rate. This does get confusing. We are in 2014 and we are discussing a 2014 tax rate, not a 2015, which will be a year from now. So I did want to clarify that. I hope nobody was confused about that. Item number 3, again, back on the property and casualty insurance. I have provided you commissioners with kind of a summary, and I can bring out all the detail that you want. As you'll recall, we had decided this year not to utilize an insurance consultant to help us make these decisions. And we chose a group which included myself and Carl and Christie and Commissioner Riddle to go over these insurance proposals. We had 2, actually 3, but we had 2 major proposals, CAPS Insurance and the Texas Association of Counties. We had Buford Insurance did not give us a proposal on anything other than what they are currently covering, and that is the cyber liability. And they have sent us a renewal on that, so I do have a price on that. What I have tried to do and I don't know if this will be sufficient for you. If you want some more time to study the breakdowns and the backup documentation for all of this, I'll be glad to give it to you. But the bottom line is we have two very, very competitive proposals here. And I'm going to let these two fellows that are here speak very briefly. Todd, if you'll kind of explain to us the uniqueness of Texas Association of Counties risk pool and how that compares with typical insurance. If you take a couple of minutes and explain that to us at the podium, and anything else that you would want to say. At this time, Texas Association of Counties does provide our work comp insurance, but they also provide a wide variety of coverage in several other areas, and they are always good competitive contributors to our decision here. So again, if you'll kind of explain to the commissioners what the risk pool is.
Certainly. Good morning, Judge. Good morning, Commissioners. Todd Kiesel here with Texas Association of Counties. Truly appreciate your time today. Currently, we handle y'all's workers' compensation program.
Yeah, just raise it up there. There you go.
Sorry about that. Currently, we handle your workers' compensation program, and it's our pleasure to do so. We've been doing that for a number of years. We have responded to your request for proposal with all other lines of coverage. We are a pool. We are not insurance, but we respond just like insurance does. The difference being that insurance is regulated by the Texas Department of Insurance. We're regulated by our Board of Directors and our bylaws. We are proposing the lines of coverage that we have proposed, that I'm sure the judge has the summary of coverage for you there. Along with our coverage, basically comes with our service. Things that we will be doing for y'all that we feel that need to be updated within the county is we'll be doing a property appraisal program attached to your property program. As far as your law enforcement coverage, we've got some PATSI training that will be conducted by our law enforcement consultant working directly with the law enforcement department there. Besides myself, we have HR consultants that will assist with any and all HR questions and concerns, and our safety consultant working with y'all on your workers' compensation, also on your general liability to help protect the county in regards to that. Basically, we appreciate the opportunity to respond to your request for proposal. We're hoping to be able to provide the proper coverage to you and the proper services that come along with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Steve, I'll give you a moment if you care to. Any opening statement that you might have. I don't know what, I don't have any detailed questions for you at this time, but.
Okay, well, as you all know, we've been providing the coverage for the last 3 years, and over the last, 10 or 12 off and on for the majority of that time. We certainly hope that we've done a good job for you there. I don't know how our numbers stack up this year against Texas Association of Counties. Have nothing negative to say about Texas Association of Counties. They've been around a long time. We do offer most of the same services as far as loss control and recommendations as it relates to law enforcement activities and all those things. The coverage that we have quoted didn't line up exactly with your bid specifications. What we did was basically quoted what the renewal was, which was the recommendation from your previous consultant. So there were a few things that were in your bid specifications that there was some difference on. Mostly our coverage was more than what you were asking for in your bid specification. Now I think Brian and Carl and Al and them have done a good job trying to distinguish between those things. Certainly trust their judgment on that. The other thing I'd just like to say is as far as our shop goes, we're right here. I think we've done you a good job. I don't know that there's been any issue that there's been a concern. Certainly, I think I would know about that if that was the case. So, The other thing is that we're a rather significant taxpayer in this county. I know you have to make a decision that's based on, maybe not looking exactly at that. You got to do what's right for the county, and we respect that. We will respect whatever decision that you make. But we employ 40 people in this town, and not all of them are property taxpayers, but all of them spend money in this community. So I just ask for you to consider that too. Maybe we're the best deal. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I want you to consider that too when you make your decision. So, but no matter what happens, we'll continue to do whatever we can on behalf of the county in every way, and I respect whatever decision that you make.
Thank you.
Any questions? Anybody? Okay, just did.
Thanks. All right, guys, if you'll take a look here at this summary that I provided you, I kind of want to walk you through line by line here as we approach a bottom line. But I've noted for you in each case who the carrier is. Now, you need to see this as it relates to CAPS, because CAPS insurance will go out and they will get quotes from the big insurance companies. And here they are providing us with quotes that are a mixture of some liability quotes from a company called Trident, as well as some auto and property from Travelers, whose name you're familiar with. And there's even one, an Aspen American there on the cyber liability policy. Whereas when you look at the carrier related to TAC, it's all coming out of the TAC risk pool. They don't do business with other big insurance companies. They have is self-insurance the wrong word? It's kind of similar to a self-insurance, but it's all a pool. Monies are collected from the counties that do business, insurance business through TAC, and that pool is the source of payment of claims. So let's begin with general liability there. If you'll notice, one difference on there is the general liability. CAPS quoted $1 million, and what's the proper terminology? Per occurrence and aggregate, is that the right words? Now, I do need to note that even though there appears to be a difference there on the limits of a $1 million, $2 million looks higher on the CAPS side, that additional coverage is coming from that excess liability policy, which is on the line below, correct? Is that right? Am I stating that correctly? I need to hear that again. In the absence of the excess liability, it's $1 million, $2 million. That's correct. Okay, then I assumed that wrong. All right. So forget about what I just told you. The excess liability there that we'll jump to in a minute, I'll speak on that in just a second. But as you're looking at those general liability quotes there, you see there's a little bit of additional premium that's asked for by TAC. And you'll note that there's a little bit more coverage, not a little bit, another $1 million in the aggregate that is offered by CAPS as compared to $1 million, $1 million. This is a $1 million, $2 million. We move on down to the excess liability. Texas Association of Counties does not offer an excess liability. They can and have quoted us larger limits on the base general liability policy. So the excess liability is something that CAPS has quoted. You can choose to take advantage of that. That's something that is optional. That does offer additional coverage over and above the basic limits of which policies, Steve? Okay, so there are several lines where we have in the past chosen to go with an excess liability policy or an umbrella policy. And in the event, correct me if I'm wrong, in the event that you were to have a large claim in one area that ate up that $1 million of excess, it wouldn't be available for another claim in another area. Once that excess is used up, it's gone. If you had to buy more after a large claim, you could buy some more additional excess liability. Okay. In our bottom summary, I have reduced the overall total quote by that excess liability in an effort to try to get the comparisons, more apples and apples. Moving on to the automobile liability, comparable limits, comparable deductible. And here, Texas Association of Counties has the edge there, $17,000 versus $20,000 or $21,000. We move down to auto physical damage, and here's where CAPS makes up quite a bit of ground. $1,000 deductible on comprehensive, $1,000 deductible on collision, and you can see there that CAPS, and that's not an error. That was very comparable to the amount of premium that we are paying this year. So $16,000 for Texas Association of Counties, $4,800 for CAPS. We move on down to property coverage. Deductible of $10,000. Total values that we are using, and these are values that we, the county, provided. We may have made a couple of changes in what we had provided for CAPS versus TAC, but we're talking about total value coverage of, roughly $29 million each. And there, TAC has a little bit of an edge, about $1,000 edge on that property quote. Moving down to the scheduled equipment, or Steve, this is what you all refer to as inland marine, and maybe even you, Todd, same thing. This is going to be for equipment mobile equipment such as our big county road equipment. What else might be included in something like that?
It's really hard to put on there. You do not include all of your equipment on there. It won't have a label in it. So I don't know about having a schedule, but you have chosen.
Yeah, we provided you with that schedule. And with TAC, that's included in the property coverage. With CAPS, that is an additional policy provided by Travelers to give you that coverage on your mobile equipment or your separately specified equipment. All right, next page we move to some liability coverage here. The first is public officials. You'll note the differences in the limits. We've asked TAC to quote a $2 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate, whereas CAPS has quoted a $1 million per occurrence with a $4 million aggregate. That's as close as I could get you on the, as far as a comparison. TAC was able to provide some additional coverage there. I will note that TAC initially came out with some coverages that were quite a bit less, in some cases $100,000 per, $300,000 aggregate, and it is TAC's belief, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, that those lower limits were adequate due to, what's the right word that I'm looking for, tort laws that would limit the exposure of the county. Can we hand them a microphone, or either come up to the mic? Okay.
On your general liability and your automobile liability, we have quoted the Texas tort limits, and basically it's been our experience based upon those laws that were created in 1969. The majority of the counties in Texas that we handle have those limits. And basically, the law protects the counties for bodily injury and property damage liability to those limits that are shown. That's one reason why we don't offer an umbrella, because basically the law is protecting the county so that they can do business. It removes the lawsuit provisions there.
Thank you. Steve, any comment to that as to why we have found ourselves purchasing coverage in excess of those tort limits? And again, those were recommendations that came from Mr. Preston in the past.
Well, certainly you are covered under the tort liability limits by the state of Texas. what happens, and our carriers understand that and know that too, okay? But there could be an occasion where you operate outside of the state of Texas. If your sheriff's department's running over to Louisiana to pick up prisoners, or Oklahoma or someplace that it falls outside of that. And TAC may have a provision for that when they operate outside, but the tort coverage is for bodily injury and property damage. And your general liability policy covers things other than just bodily injury and property damage. You get some personal injury claims in there, libel, slander claims, those kind of things that might fall outside of those tort limits. But the gist of it is, okay, the commercial carriers understand about the tort liability limits, okay? So basically, they price your policy to be competitive with those limits, and then they tack $1 million limit on top of it, okay? So what we're offering is not terribly different than what TAC is doing, but we're showing on our policy $1 million limit, and they're giving you $1 million limit only if you operate outside of the protection of the tort laws, okay, if you're having to get outside of the state of Texas. So, I mean, it all boils down to, is it worth a few couple $1,000s to go from 100, 300, 100 limits to $1 million limit? And from the perspective of your consultant, and we've kind of held that perspective too, plug that one little hole with a few $1,000s or whatever it takes, as long as it's not unreasonable, and go with the higher limits. So that's kind of, we did look at backing off the $500,000 limit on your general liability policy and excluding that from your excess policy, and I think it was like $1,500 it saved. So I just didn't think that was worth the savings.
Yeah, and that's right. And in order to get a more comparable quote, I did ask Todd to come up with his coverages and Steve to come down just so we could compare. And there wasn't a whole lot saved by reducing that $2 million coverage down to those tort limits. But here I've given you the closest comparison that I could give to you.
Right. And to get the $2 million limit on the public officials in your law, we have to do the excess policy. That's just kind of how they would not quote the $2 million primary, so you have to add the excess policy on top of that. And then when you do that, you get the extra limits on your employment practices, liability coverage.
And I'll point that out here in these next categories here.
Yeah, okay, good deal.
All right, so you'll see there on your public officials, you'll note those differences in the carrier limit, or excuse me, in the limits on each of those policies. Moving down to employee practices liability, this is tough to compare these, as TAC includes those in other coverage, whereas we've got this as a separate policy with caps, $1 million, $4 million, and again, if you choose to go with that excess liability, that does give you additional coverage on a per occurrence, an additional $1 million if you felt like you needed that additional coverage. Moving on down to law enforcement, here again, $2 million on TAC for TAC and $1 million, $4 million for caps. To bring that up to the comparable $2 million per occurrence, you would need to have the excess liability. There the edge goes to TAC by about $4,300. Crime policy, these last few are relatively small in the whole, in the big picture. Crime coverage, comparable limits, comparable deductible, comparable premiums. Cyber liability. TAC at this time does not offer a cyber liability. I believe that that's in the works, and they should be offering that in the near future. At this time, they do not. CAPS did get us a quote from Aspen America through Think Risk, I guess was the name of the insurance company. This is not a policy that is currently provided by CAPS. It is provided by Buford Insurance, and while CAPS quote here is at $38.99, you'll see there at the very bottom of the page the Buford quote to renew this year is at $1,950. I'll want to take a look at that. I believe that it's comparable with a $10,000 deductible and $1 million limit. Lastly, fiduciary liability. here again covered in other areas. Todd, what policy is that covered under your fiduciary liability? Which one is that covered as? Okay, not offering the fiduciary. Okay, and again, explain that to me, because that's the one I keep forgetting. What is fiduciary liability, Steve or Todd?
This is the one that we were struggling to understand why you had the coverage. Basically, and we think it's coming under your health care plan, where you have, I believe, it's a $50,000 stopgap. But I was not able to find any documentation on that in your records as to why you have the fiduciary liability. Basically, it's essentially a way of bonding and financial protection. And I think that currently that you're paying about $2,300 for that. But I wasn't able to discover the framework as to why you truly have it.
Okay. Steve, in your opinion, what is fiduciary liability coverage giving us at $2,300 there?
The administration of your...
Of the health insurance plan?
Health insurance, your personal self-funded on your health insurance. So it basically is protecting the financial dealings that you have in both your retirement plan and your self-funded.
If we as the administrator were to make an error there, for example. Now, I believe we found out that we are provided with some coverage through the retirement system. Didn't we find that out, that perhaps is coverage that we don't need? That we're covered for any errors that we might make? Okay, and I don't know what a situation would be where we could be held liable for something like that if we made an error that resulted in a lower benefit to an employee or something like that, and they decided to sue us. All right, if you'll look at the next line there, you'll see $109,000 compared to $110,000. That's simply taking each of the totals above and adding them all up. Now, a few other adjustments that you can make. Under the caps column there in blue, if we were to remove the cyber liability, which we need to do because we can get it cheaper with the current Buford quote, we would take out $3,899. If we were to take out that excess liability policy, if you felt like your lower limits of $1 million would be adequate on several of those lines, that's a fairly expensive add-on for an additional $1 million worth of coverage there at $4,500. To try to better compare apples and apples, I've pulled that out of there. The next line is work comp discount. TAC offers a rather unique situation here. If you choose to go with TAC as your workers' comp carrier, which we currently use, and I have not put any work comp quotes on here. They were so close, and we don't have any firm quotes for work comp yet. That policy will renew at the end of the year. Both companies have asked that we get closer to the renewal date so that we can see exactly what the claims have been before we get those quotes. We anticipate that they would be very comparable. However, if you give the work comp coverage to TAC, TAC gives you specific discounts. I think it's 2% per line up to a maximum of 10%. Is that right? So you could take a flat 10% off of that $109,000 if you choose to give all lines of business to TAC, including the work comp, which we will visit at the end of the year or closer to the January 1 renewal date. And that yields you a bottom line that, like I told you, was very close. And first of all, I want to acknowledge Todd and Steve for taking time out of their busy schedules and personally coming to see us and visit with me and helping me to understand and providing us with higher limit quotes, lower limit quotes, anything that they asked that I asked them to do, they took care of it and got me quick responses. I don't think either one of these is a superior or an inferior coverage. There are some differences. So it's a tough call, but I appreciate all the effort here, and I leave this decision for you. Commissioner Riddle and Carl and I met one last time to go over all this after I'd put together this summary. So I would ask for any comments, if you so choose. Carl, Commissioner Riddle, either one, if you would like to add anything or have any questions about this. Sure.
TAC is including in their, you have to tell me a point again, which ones that they're including, like we have separate limits for our employment practices liability, they include that in the public officials, okay? So you're actually have one million limit for both, or whatever they're quoting for your public officials, okay? Where we have a separate limit.
Okay.
So we're twice the limits.
Because they're separate policies and not lumped together.
Okay, so you're not comparing apples when you're looking at limits, okay? I guess that's probably EPLI, it's probably, I guess that's probably the whole board, but you're describing what else or something else. Anyway, that's.
Employment practices, public officials, and fiduciary.
Well, fiduciary is not included in it.
Oh, that's right, okay, that's right. Could we conceivably do without the fiduciary liability?
You know, I think we're required to have a fiduciary liability for something. You didn't get designated benefit plan fiduciary liability coverage. So I'm pretty sure that is what's required in order for you to have yourself on the health.
In order to operate with the type of health insurance, self-insured program we have.
Violate HIPAA, you let personal medical information get out or something like that. That's what this is an example.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, sorry I cut you off there.
The public officials liability and general liability, that's two totally different things.
That's correct.
What's the difference?
Well, the general liability protects the county, the premise of the county. The public officials' liability protects the elected officials and the employees of the county. As it was mentioned, we combine our employment practices liability along with our public officials' liability, and we're offering a $2 million limit there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Carl, any comments?
Did you make a comment that was it law enforcement, one of those is required for you to name? Was there any one of those? I thought you made a comment earlier that when we were talking about the 100,000, 300,000, one of these liability policies, the public official or law enforcement, is there a minimum requirement?
No, I think I asked Todd for a higher coverage to get it more comparable to the CAPS coverage if you had the excess liability umbrella. Because he had initially quoted those at the tort limits.
Well, the Texas tort limits apply to the automobile liability and the general liability only. They do not apply to the law enforcement or public officials. So I think when you look at the law enforcement liability, TAC is quoted 2 million, Steve is quoted 1 million, but he's saying that his excess will provide you the other 1 million. So I'm not really sure you can really back his excess off if we need $2 million for law enforcement liability. I don't know whether we do or not, but.
You get the other million, you gotta have the excess liability, is that what you're saying?
You get 2 million on the public officials and the law enforcement, we have to have excess coverage.
So you would
The
have.
excess coverage also gives you the general liability and your practice liability.
And we currently have what I'm reflecting here, a $1 million, $4 million with a $1 million umbrella.
That's correct.
And Todd, what did you originally quote on the, say, public officials and law enforcement? Was it less than that 2.2?
Yes, sir, that's exactly what we quoted. We quoted a $2 million per occurrence.
That was your original quote?
That's correct.
Okay, I didn't ask you to raise that one up. That was the original quote. Okay.
Right.
I think my point is, Judge, that you probably don't need to back off the 3899 excess liability, but you do need to back off fiduciary liability because tax is not on the I guess.
Okay.
I agree with Steve. I think we have to have it covered, so it's kind
Okay.
of like the cyber, you have to have it covered.
And then when you put that excess liability coverage back on there, then that gives you some additional benefits elsewhere. So, you know, every time you make a little move, it affects several things.
4587, you get to subtract 2362.
Okay.
Well, that would give you $2 million per occurrence, $4 million excess on your public officials and your law enforcement. Okay, when the excess goes. So with 100 hours, you can have $2 million losses under your public officials or your law enforcement. Not running the coverage with a 2, which is what they have. You're out after 2. Okay. Chance of that happening may be pretty slim, but nevertheless, there's a difference in coverage there.
The public officials are probably slim. Law enforcement.
Yeah.
Well, granted, that's your big exposure, law enforcement.
Somebody gets shot.
We've had several lawsuits attempted in the last few years, but thanks to the good job that our guys do documenting, we haven't succumbed to anything significant. All right, would anybody like to spend more time on this? We have a October 1 renewal, so we need to act fairly quickly here. We're 2 weeks away from that deadline. It can be bound fairly quickly with either company. I think the decision that you have here comes down to some dollars, and you have a few $1,000s that TAC has the edge, and CAPS has the local connection. So it makes it a tough call.
Have you looked at it, maybe look at apple there, and then can we divide this up, or you want to go with one company or the other?
That's certainly an option that you have. Just remember, if you're going to give it all to TAC to get that maximum discount, they would ask for all of these lines there to generate you that much in savings.
Let me ask TAC one thing. If we were to go with y'all provide all that training, the truck drivers and all the safety stuff, yeah, that's all provided free.
That is correct. That is correct. Our contributions include all the trainings that come along with everything. There's no additional cost for trainings. You're going to have our HR consultant, our law enforcement consultant, myself, and the rest of the TAC staff to assist you with no additional cost. Included in that is the property appraisal as well.
Tell me again how that discount is calculated, just to be sure that I've done it. Was it just on certain lines of coverage that discount is offered?
If you move your lines to TAC, it's basically 2% per line of coverage. So on your automobile, you got 2%. On your public officials, 2%. Law enforcement, 2%. Property, 2%.
If there's none of them, we wouldn't get 2%. So if we would, in our calculations, we assume that if we gave it all to you, we would get 2% off of all of them. You would go 10%.
You get a 10% total, you get a 10% discount off of your workers' compensation contribution. And currently, I believe you're paying roughly about $60,000 just for discussion's sake.
Okay, so the discount is applied to workers' comp.
Yes, that is.
Okay, well, I'm glad you, where did I get that 2% per line?
It's because it's 2%. If you look at it, we offer workers' compensation, automobile, general liability, public officials, law enforcement, and then crime. Crime we exclude because crime is $1,900, but it's basically 2% per line for a total of 10% off your workers' comp.
Okay, so that discount flows over to the workers' comp.
But it still is $10,000.
No, this is where I misunderstood. The maximum amount of discount would be 10% of whatever our work comp premium was.
That's correct.
Which is currently at about $60,000, and I think that's anticipated. So I've made an error there in giving the discount based on all of these lines added up together. So that $10,900 there at the bottom of your second page that's got a negative by it, really that needs to be about $6,000. So that bumps that up from, say, 103, 171. We take caps 101, 902. We need to add back the 4587 in general liability coverage and deduct the 2362.
Well, Brad, if our comp calls, we're 57.8.
Yeah, and theirs was a little bit less than that. I think it was actually like 56 and some change. All right, let me kind of do the math on that. So 101,902 plus 4587 minus 2362. Put you at 104, 127. Making it even harder. All right. The best I can do at a comparable, you can see, guys, we're there at, $1,000 difference between these.
Who was the 104 tax?
No, caps, 104, 127. For caps, 103, 171.
Judge, I'm gonna make a motion, we go with our local.
You ready to do that, or do you want to, any of this you want to study anymore?
That's my figure.
Okay. Got a motion by Commissioner Hinton that we utilize CAPS insurance. And to clarify, may I assume that you're going to not include the cyber liability that we have
Yes, sir.
a quote from Buford?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor. I'm going to second that motion and call for a vote. All those in favor of utilizing CAPS insurance to provide these lines of coverage with the exception of cyber liability, say aye. Okay?
Judge, I'll make a motion, we look this over and do it at the next meeting.
Okay.
And I'm gonna make that motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Hockaday that we table this to give you all some more time to look at this.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Second, all those in favor of tabling this, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Nay? 2 nays. All right, we're going to table this. We're going to look at it a little bit closer. I'm going to appoint a new committee. All right.
Do what then?
Remember that our next meeting puts us awfully close to the end of the month, the 29th to be exact.
Well, that's Monday night, is it not?
I'm talking about putting it on the next meeting, the 22nd. Judge. 22nd?
It's the 22nd, that's right. I'm a week off. We do have a meeting Monday night, which is our budget hearing. We can put it on that Monday night agenda, 6 p.m.
That was my
Okay.
motion, put it on the next meeting.
Okay. All right. For clarification, what do you all anticipate occurring over these next few days? So that we don't come back and rehash the same thing, what information can I get for you to help this decision be made?
I'd just like to go over these figures.
Okay.
And,
If there's
settle them
anything
out.
else I can get for you, I'll be glad to show you the more detailed information, and I'll be glad to provide you with contact info for either of these guys. Gentlemen, this is a tough decision here. As you can see, it would sure have been a whole lot easier if we'd had, 20% differential between the two. But Todd, as much as I appreciate what you've done, we do have a local guy here that we feel comfortable with, and we've got to give him a little bit of advantage here. Commissioner Fields?
No, I just like, if you, because we kind of made a mistake there in the figure and stuff, just wanted to look over it, but you've been involved in this, if you don't mind, look over it, make sure we're comparing apples to
I've
apples.
looked all I'm going to
Okay.
look. I mean, I'll focus in on anything, and I'll dig deeper on anything, absolutely, or I'll be glad to sit down with you and show you some detailed background. But there are some things that are just not going to be perfectly comparable apples to apples. That's just the way it's going to be. But again, I want you guys to have every advantage you can, because I've had a couple of week advantage on y'all looking over this stuff, and it's still challenging. All right, that brings us to our item number 4, closing comments. I just want to say it was a great ribbon cutting yesterday. I've got the chance to drive one time down the Loop Road and look forward to being able to drive the northern route. Really exciting to me, and I know that Commissioner Fields was sharing his observations of the lack of 18-wheelers on the road this morning going through town. But anyway, thank you guys, that especially Commissioner Fields and Commissioner Hockaday, that were recognized yesterday for the many years that you've been working on this, and the meetings that you attended and the things that you did in the early days. I'm very grateful we have this project, and look forward to the completion of 4,000 here within the next year. Commissioner Fields?
Nothing at this time, Judge.
Commissioner Riddle?
This thing that you gave us about is this the number on there, the percentage of the rate increase or the amount of money?
That's the reduction in the value over the base year there back in 2008?
Right. I understand that, but the last column that someone's typed in right here, those are the tax rates and 33.33. Did you do that?
I think that's the changes in the tax rate, yes. When it went from 33.9 to 35.03, and then each successive year, that's an increase over that base year rate at 33.90 back in 2008. Commissioner Hinton
I have nothing
or
to
Commissioner Hockaday?
The only thing I got, did you look at that bill that I put on your desk about the installation at the weigh stations out there?
Yes.
And I have. And
Let me, and you were right. Let me give you some further information. The job that we did back several months ago was Mark Stansel, who provides the rodent and pest elimination services. He did some replacement of insulation in the walls. This current bid is Justin Stansel, Mark's nephew, who is doing work on the exterior of the building to seal the cap, and then new insulation above the ceiling tile. So it's not a duplication of work that's previously been done. and it's a different company. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn when you are ready. So moved, and I've got a motion by Commissioner Hockaday and second by Commissioner Fields. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everyone, for attending.